everybody, and welcome to my latest Genshin Spiral Abyss guide for version 4.5. I'm glad to have you here, and welcome back. Now then, let's go on to this guide. So, starting with floor 11, there is a 75% geo damage increase as your Blessing of the Abyss. AoE damage is good for both halves. Note, though, that there are Hydro Phantasms, which are immune to Hydro, obviously, and they're also immune to being frozen. Second half has enemies with elemental shields, all from Fontaine. And Animo, thankfully, can swirl their respective elements onto each other, and the crowd control is just great. So everybody, this is just a slight disclaimer from Future Ren that this team that you're seeing right now, on my first half at least, is just a more of like a I'll throw everything in and see how it works. Do not do this with your actual Abyss guys. Consecrated beasts do have a resistance to being frozen, so just keep that in mind when choosing your team. Finally, we're on to teams. So for the first half, if you run Mono Geo or Navia teams, you should ideally include a Claymore character to knock down shields. The next team, for the second half, you'll ideally want to run an Aggravate or Hyper Bloom team. If you don't have such teams, you can always run a team with Pyro. So, you finally made it inside the chambers. Alright, so you have two options here. You can swirl the enemies together or wait for the Haley Trails to walk over. Screw this wave, it's quick and simple. The next two waves have ranged Haley Trails and a Geo Samaturl on one side, then two Mitatrolls on the other. Focused on the range group, as the two Mitatrolls will charge over towards you. If the Geo Samaturl gets its Geo Pillars up, heavy attacks will break it. You could also use ranged attacks to knock them off or swirl them away.
Game's up. Fun is over.
Stabilize.
Okay, so with these kind of enemies, they tend to charge at you and stagger your characters, so the ideal positioning is in the back so you can edge bait them just in case. The Dendro and Cryo Shroom fly up, but the Geo Shroom tends to stagger you with headbutts.
Torn to oblivion.
Now, the second wave has Fontaine enemies with their shields. You can swirl them together with Animo. That can reduce your shield, but if you have a counter element, that will also help to get rid of their shield quickly. On to Chamber 2. So there are 4 of these beasts. You can focus on one or go back to spawn because they'll all move towards you. So grouping shouldn't be an issue. This should be an easy, quick run. So next we have the 2 mechs. I focus on the Annihilation mech, the one on the right, because it'll take out the turret, and the Assault mech will naturally move towards you. So easy grouping, easy win. Alright. I'm not gonna lie, I saw these Consecrated Beasts in the second half of Floor 11, and I was like, oh my god, not again. But, thankfully they're weaker here, and the only spawning waves of 1, even more lucky. They are drawn to you, so aggro won't be an issue, and if they bring out their block thing, you can make them vulnerable, and you can immediately destroy that block thing with their specific element. For the Thing to Beast, you can use Dendro, and the Vulture will need Pyro. Now, the real reason why I was so afraid to see these Consecrated Beasts back in the Abyss is because these guys stutter a lot. So you'll have to either be good at dodging, bring a good shielder, or bring one heck of a reliable healer. You're gonna need it.
Now you shall perish. Shine down.
Okay, so remember how I did that quick disclaimer before I got into any of this? Well, just remember that I was also unaware that they were immune to Animo. Well, I'm assuming the swirling aspect. Oops. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but I didn't. So I'm just gonna skip through this, and you're not gonna see me struggle with Mahu Tao. Alright, so the ideal path to beating this section, and the very last section of this part of the Abyss, you'll want to aim for the Hydro Phantasm that's on the right one, since it has a ranged attack. This is where you really want to use Pyro and to trigger Vaporize. It's a great reaction at the moment. But these guys are heavy hitters too, and honestly, you need a good shielder, good dodging skills, good healer. These attacks hit. Okay, so second half, and the final half, thankfully, we've got 2 construction mechs and 1 enchanter mech. The ideal position is in the middle, since the construction mech will swerve into each other and they'll basically aim for you. At this point, it is ideal to use your AoE attack. Though their movement can be RNG in general, and by that I'm talking about the construction mechs, they will still generally target you. Be mindful for swinging and spinning attacks, since they can stagger you a lot, and it gets annoying very quickly.
Wind, hear me. Now you shall perish.
Alright, so heading towards floor 12. For this floor, like every other floor 12 before it, there is no Blessing of the Abyss. In the first half, having a Hydro or Electro unit is strongly recommended since it is the strongest at breaking Dendro and Pyro shields. The Breacher Primus has a Dendro shield you can counter with Electro, Hydro, Pyro. Abyss Mage obviously has a Pyro shield, counter with Hydro and Electro. Alright, so next chamber, you know, Dendro, Electro, and Pyro Specters, that's great and all, and the Whopper Flowers, of course, but what separates this chamber from every other chamber is the fact they brought the Shadow Husk back, and they gain buffs if they attack you while you're shielded, so make sure not to bring a shielder. Ideally, when you are fighting the Icewind Sweet Dirge of Coppelia version, you'll want to use the Numa alignment to temporarily stun it. As for your next boss, it is shielded, and you'll have to use Claymore plunge attacks for max efficiency. You can run other characters and still do the plunge attacks just fine, but it will take a lot longer to break that shield. For the first half of floor 12, you can run Child International with Kazuha, of course Raiden with Yelan, Xiling, and Bennett. Next and final team for the first half will be Neuvillette, Baiju, Furina, Kazuha. The second half teams are as follows: Yoimiya, Zhongli, Xingqiu, and Yunjin. You can also run Navia, Albedo, Xiling, and Bennett. For the final team comp of the second half, you can run Hu Tao, Zhongli, Xingqiu, and Yelan. So we begin with a Pyro Mage and two large overgrown Breacher Primus. If you have Hydro or Pyro characters, you can delete the shields of each enemy quickly. If you manage to bring in an animal character, you can swirl the Mage's Pyro to delete the Breacher's shield. From what I've noticed, it's best to take out the Mage first, then focus on one side of the Breacher since they naturally drift away from you, and if done correctly, you can push them together and take them out more efficiently. So after defeating the Breacher Primus, you will notice that the second wave of enemies will be one Cryo Fatui operator and a Wind operator. Honestly, grouping them can be a little difficult, but the best way to really go about it is to simply keep pushing one towards the other. Manage your movement, and that's the best you can do for grouping unless you have an animal character. If you have an animal character and swirl, great time. Put them on the field, bro. They're gonna be the MVP. If you brought along an Electro-wielding character just like I suggested, this is their time to shine. This boss is very RNG based, but specifically the Electro element when it comes to contact with a Dendro Chicken is amazing because it gives it a stun effect for about 15 seconds where it gives you the most ideal attack pattern. Just in case you want to try out using Pyro, I will show you what happens if you use Pyro. If you didn't notice, it summons mini-me's and it is very annoying and very time consuming. Though you could bring the most ideal element, this boss is still very RNG based. So what you really want to do and what you may have to do is do plenty of resets to get the most ideal attack pattern. But because you do a bunch of these resets, you'll become very familiar with the boss. Alright, so we got a lot of Specters from Dendro, Electro, and Pyro. So you have two options. You can swirl them away, or you can counter each Spectre with their specific counter element. The Whopper Flowers, you can edge bait them, or you can choose to just go ram your way through with just raw damage. Your other option is to group them with animal characters. This final wave in this chamber is just a DPS check. Remember not to put your shields up at all. You really have to go at it repeatedly because if you put on a shield, they're gonna get buffs. From when I was playing this section of the Abyss, which I did it multiple times, I found that if you take out the one that activates like the weird pyro ring, it makes it significantly easier to fight them off without a shield. I've also noticed that as long as you're consistently moving, the hits shouldn't really be hitting you that much, and you should be mostly fine. You just have to have decent dodging skills. The second half has a very simple enemy perpetual mechanical array. All you have to do is keep dodging his plunge attacks, and if you happen to have a ranged unit, you can keep attacking while up in the air. After roughly 30 seconds or 30% of his HP, it'll activate Rune Sentinels. You'll want to target the one with the ring. If it is the burrito one, you'll want to keep it between you and the boss since it'll dash away. It'll be easier to kill and transfer damage to the boss, and I meant Dorito. If it's the crab, be wary of the shield that may consume more time for you. If it happens to be the snake or the jellyfish, don't worry, move towards the boss, it'll teleport towards you. Chamber 3 has the Icewind Sweet, Dirge of Coppelia version. Coppelia will deal animal damage, while Coppelia deals cryo damage. Their attacks can trigger reactions on you, so be careful. The best way to play this is to keep Coppelius in front, always visible, so you may dodge the incoming cryo attacks because he shoots cryo. Dodging and strong healing is very important, and if you manage to bring in a shield, use your shield. Ideally though, you should have a basic grasp of their movement since their flow is quite consistent. Before you can dish out any real damage, the boss does have a shield and it can be broken with Geo or heavy attacks, specifically from a claymore or just plunger attacks because it has that whole gravity field going on. This is the part where Zhongli shines, Navia shines, really anyone with Geo. But Zhongli specifically because he can break the shield and he works to defend against powerful shockwave attacks. Yes, Zhongli's skill and burst is very useful here. Here's a very niche thing that I do, because I noticed that there's certain like little circles there that indicate that an attack is about to come up from the ground, which I'm assuming is rocks. I like to do the plunge attacks in a circle motion so I can keep on moving so those attacks don't hit me. And when it is stunned after you delete its shield, you can stun it for longer using a Numa attack.
Busted.
If this enemy manages to pull up its shield again because, you know, DPS or something, do not worry, just restart the whole process and just keep going at it until you get your 36 stars.
I'm going in. Illusion shattered. Busted.
And that, my dear friends, is how we 36 Spiral Abyss. Congratulations on making it this far, and thank you for watching. I will see you all next time. This is Ren, and I'm out.